There's a sound your brain is hardwired to respond to before you can think. A snap in the dark, a rustle in the grass, a silence that arrives too suddenly in a place that was just loud. You don't decide to react. Your body reacts for you. Heart rate spikes, muscles tighten, attention narrows to a single point. All of it happens in under 100 milliseconds, faster than conscious thought, faster than language, faster than you. That response didn't develop because the modern world is dangerous. It developed because for 300,000 years, the world was. And the things that lived inside that world, the things your ancestors lay awake dreading in the dark, didn't just shape human survival. They shaped human civilization, religion, art, language, the entire structure of how we organize ourselves and why. Fear didn't just keep ancient humans alive. It built everything. Let's start with the obvious one, because most people assume the answer is predators. Lions, wolves, the enormous short-faced bear that stood 11 feet tall and could outrun a horse. These were real threats, documented in the fossil record, embedded in cave art, reflected in the remains of campsites where the bones of humans and large predators sit together in ways that tell a story nobody wants to read too carefully. But here's what the anthropological record actually shows. Predators were not the primary source of ancient human fear. They were a background condition, a constant low-level threat that humans adapted to manage. Through fire, through shelter, through moving in groups, through the communal vigilance of a band that never fully slept at the same time. The fears that consumed ancient humans most deeply, the ones that drove their rituals and their prayers and their gods and their entire framework for understanding existence, were different. They were stranger, and in some ways, they are far more familiar than we want to admit. The first great fear wasn't death. It was the wrong kind of death. In nearly every ancient culture we have any record of, dying was not the worst thing that could happen to you. Dying badly was. Dying alone was. Dying without the proper rituals, without your people around you, without the correct preparations for whatever came after. That was the catastrophe. The ancient Egyptians spent more resources on their burial practices than almost any other aspect of life, not because they were obsessed with death, but because they were terrified of what happened if death wasn't handled correctly. The soul, they believed, had to navigate a complex and dangerous underworld. It needed its body intact. It needed its name spoken. It needed food and tools and the right prayers said in the right order. If any of that failed, the soul didn't just cease to exist. It wandered. It suffered. It became something dangerous. This same structure appears across cultures that had no contact with Egypt, in ancient China, in Mesopotamia, and indigenous cultures across the Americas. The dead who weren't properly honored became threats to the living. Ghosts weren't just metaphors. They were the consequence of ritual failure, and ritual failure was something that could happen to anyone. The fear wasn't dying. The fear was being forgotten. But there was a second fear running underneath all of this, older than religion, older than burial practices, older than anything we found written down. It's the fear that modern psychology has a name for now, but that ancient humans felt in their bones without any name at all. The fear of being cast out. In a hunter-gatherer group of 25 to 50 people, social rejection wasn't embarrassing. It was a death sentence. Slow, usually, but certain. You couldn't hunt alone efficiently. You couldn't defend yourself alone at night. You couldn't survive a bad winter, a bad injury, a bad season of illness without the group around you. Alone meant dead. Neuroscientists studying the brain have found that social rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Not metaphorically, literally. The same regions light up. The same compounds are involved. Your brain processes being left out the same way it processes being burned. That's not a coincidence. That's evolution. Your ancestors who felt social rejection as agony survived longer than the ones who didn't care, because the ones who didn't care wandered off, and the ones who wandered off died. Ancient humans didn't just fear predators, they feared each other. They feared the moment the group decided you were no longer worth keeping. This is where it gets darker, because that fear of exclusion didn't stay personal, it became cosmic. In virtually every ancient religious system, the structure of divine punishment mirrors the structure of social rejection. The gods don't just kill you, they cast you out, they withdraw their protection, they turn their face away. In ancient Mesopotamian theology, illness wasn't caused by germs or injury. It was caused by your personal God abandoning you. The God who had walked beside you since birth, who whispered guidance and held your fate, had left. And the question wasn't just how to get well, it was what did I do to make it leave? The terror of divine abandonment is the fear of social exclusion scaled to the size of the universe, and it produced the same behavioral response: frantic attempts to repair the relationship, offerings, confessions, public displays of loyalty. The ancient human praying to a god they couldn't see was doing the same thing the social primate in them had always done, trying desperately not to be left alone. And then there was the dark itself. Not darkness as an abstract concept, the actual physical dark of a world without artificial light. We touched on this before in another video, but the fear embedded in genuine total darkness goes beyond what most modern people can access. In a world without fire, nightfall was the end of safety. Every predator that hunted humans hunted at night. Their eyes were built for it. Yours were not. Moving in darkness meant becoming prey. Staying still meant hoping nothing found you. The dark was where the dead lived, where spirits wandered, where things that couldn't exist in daylight came alive. And that wasn't superstition for its own sake. It was the mind building a framework for a very real threat, wrapping genuine danger in a story powerful enough to keep children from wandering away from the fire. The monsters that ancient humans invented for the dark were not imagination. They were information, a way of encoding the rule: do not go out there, stay in the light, stay with the group. Fear was a language before language existed. But the deepest fear, the one that sits underneath all the others like a fault line, wasn't predators or darkness or death or exile. It was chaos itself. Every ancient civilization built its identity around a single core narrative: order against chaos, cosmos against void. In ancient Egypt, it was Mot versus Isfet, truth and order against disorder and dissolution. In Mesopotamia, it was the gods fighting back the primordial chaos monsters to create stable ground. In Norse mythology, it is a world perpetually holding back Ragnarok, the final unraveling. The pattern is too consistent across cultures with no contact to be coincidence. Ancient humans were terrified of the world coming undone. Floods that wiped out years of food, droughts that killed slowly and without mercy, plagues that moved through camps like something deliberate, taking people with no logic anyone could understand. In a world where the difference between a good season and a bad one was the difference between your children living and dying, unpredictability wasn't just uncomfortable, it was the ultimate threat. Every ritual, every prayer, every sacrifice ever made to a god in the ancient world was a negotiation with chaos, a desperate attempt to keep the world orderly, predictable, safe, to make nature behave, to make tomorrow look like today. Because today, at least, you were still alive. Here's what's strange about all of this. Here's what the ancient fears laid out together reveal. None of them are really gone. The fear of the wrong kind of death lives on in every anxiety about legacy and being remembered. The fear of social rejection lives in every person who has ever felt the particular cold dread of being excluded from something that mattered. The fear of abandonment, human or divine, lives in every relationship where one person is terrified the other will leave. And the fear of chaos, the desperate need for the world to be ordered, predictable, and fair, that lives in every person who has ever lain awake at 3 a.m. watching the future feel like it's coming apart. We don't live in the dark anymore. We don't lose half our children to predators or cold or starvation. We have medicine and light and food systems and institutions designed to hold chaos at bay. And yet, the same fears are still running, quieter now, better dressed, but underneath everything modern life has built on top of them, still there, still shaping what we do and who we follow and what we pray for and why we cannot bear to be alone. Ancient humans were afraid of the dark. So are you. You just call it something else now.